So Callaway have three relatively new irons out. They've launched them the last few weeks. And whilst we normally do a heavy tech review on these, I'm going to touch a little bit on the tech, but look predominantly at what are we starting to see performance-wise in the fitting bay, and who are they suiting and why are they performing that way. So a bit of a differentiation and what kind of player that's going to suit to go into these club heads and what benefits there are from them. So we're going to start with the Ai200. So the 200 is the first in these line. You've got the 200, 300 and the Ti Fusion. So the 200 really is a direct replacement for the Apex last year. So what they've done is there's a little bit of a development in the face. So the AI tech in the face on all these three models has been developed. So looking at where it's thick, where it's thin, how it's bonded, the face wraps round into the sole, which stabilizes the lower part of the face. Really all designed to give that a little bit more speed and consistency across the face. And that is very much the message with the 200 and the 300. It's about consistency of performance. But what does that performance really mean? So the 200 is a sort of what we call a mid-sized club head. There's plenty of perimeter weighting. It's got a nice little bit of a beveling on the sole, bit of width, all the usual things that this would be classed as kind of a player's distance into a game improvement iron. It's in that kind of border. Everything you'd expect to see from this kind of head. The Apex series, it's a forged frame, so it is a softer frame, and that's really designed to give that softer feel and feedback that a lot of golfers like. But from a performance point of view, that's really what we're going to be looking at now. So head-wise, very, very clean visual, very kind of your usual Apex shape with a little bit of top line to it to give a bit of, I guess, forgiveness into the look. A little bit of offset on the head here. And so this is the direct replacement for the Apex iron last year, not the DC. The 300's more the DCB. So immediately what you get off this head is a load of stability. So it's actually got quite a muted sound and feel. Some of the Callaway heads in the past have given a bit more of a click and a harder note. That's actually quite a soft sound, and so that's the materials they've used on the inside to dampen down the notes. Some of the weight in the back and the padding, that all affects the sound off the club head. But that shot there, the efficiency, the smash factor 145, that's a strong performance off the head. Now it is a 27-degree loft, but as standard, which is fairly strong on the 6-iron, which is relatively strong. But there's a very distinct thing that we've been finding with these heads performance-wise in the bays, and that is if you're hitting this sort of shot shape, a little bit of a fade, there is some maintenance of spin. So if I play another one of those slightly faded shots, which is what most golfers play, then spin-wise, there's plenty of spin there. So not quite as well hit, 139 efficiency, still not bad, but we've got the spin into the 5,000s there. What we are seeing is if you're more of a draw bass player, that can change. So ball speed off the face is very, very strong and really quite impressive, but so get that club face turning over and drawing in and closing down. There's loads of ball speed, efficiency 149, so that's really come off the face strong, but that spin is down under 4,000. So face orientation and your shot shape bias is something that we're noticing with these heads is really critical to that ball flight. So there's loads of ball speed, loads of forgiveness, nice soft feel, really good sound and contact. But if you hit a draw, they're coming in pretty strong. If you hit a fade, there's a senior tour player that we worked with for a long time who's gone into these heads. He plays a bit of a fade and the spin's really stable and consistent. But a draw bass player, we tend to see that spin come down. But there is a heck of a lot of shot value off these heads. The performance, the ball speed performance, really, really strong. But what we're seeing in the bays here is, depending on your shot shape, you could see a very different ball flight, one shape to the other. Let's move on to the 300. Okay. So now we've got the Ai300. So this one is a little bit more forgiving than the 200, designed to just fit really where the DCB was last year. So what we have with this head is a slightly wider sole, a slightly modified front edge. It's not quite as sharply beveled as the 200, but a little bit more bounce on that back edge to play with. The loft sits 1 degree stronger, so it's 26 on the 6-iron here. And we've also got a little bit more offset to this head. So generally designed, hollow-bodied, designed to give that little bit more forgiveness, a little bit more mass out in the toe, a bit more tungsten on the inside of it. bit more offset, just in principle designed to help the toe come through a little bit more. So again, performance-wise, it's a relatively, it's not a huge step off the 200, so it's not a vastly different head, but a little bit of a change in the progression. Again, the same face tech, the same frame materials, again designed for that consistency across the face. A little bit heavy strike-wise there, but very much a slightly more hollow kind of contact. I'll do another one there because that wasn't a great strike. So yeah, just that little bit more of a click off the face of this, where it's a little bit more hollow bodied. They're actually tuning the sound to make it feel a little bit faster off the face. So you're going to get a slightly different note from the club face on the Ai300 to the 200. 200 being that little bit of a softer feel. Like the 200, we have that same thing from a shot shape side of things with these heads. For a slight fade, again, 146 efficiency. So that wasn't a brilliant contact either, but good ball speed considering. Retained a bit of spin. Now 4.2 is still fairly strong, but at least the spin's in the 4,000. So I'm going to do, like the 200, just play that little bit of a fade and then go back to that draw bias, because again, this is something that we've seen with both of these models having a characteristic in their performance. So playing a little bit of a cut there. Again, 4.3, 4.4 on spin. So retains, there's enough spin there. It's not high, but there's enough. Now, you're unlikely to be going to this head if you're a drawer of the ball, but I'm going to do the same comparison, and mainly that offset, the weighting positions, the kind of play this is aimed at is not somebody who's hitting a strong hook. However, if you do get that ball turning over, again, that sound is powerful off the face, 148 efficiency. But like the 200, we've now gone down to 3,500 revs on spin from 4.4. So that change in face orientation on both of these models is really, really key to that spin number. So I got a little bit more launch on this head versus the 200. So that weight positioning, the offset, and a little bit more weight down the sole of the head creates a slightly higher launch, but the spin's down that little bit more, which does mean longer total distance, longer overall distance, is a bit more efficient. So you're going to squeeze a few more yards out of this head, but you're going to lose a little bit of that feel, that softness, but gain a bit of pop, kick, distance. But again, really critical to shot shape as to where that spin sits for you. Let's move on to the final head of the three. So we're now moving on to the Ti Fusion. So what's interesting with this head, and I've got the Ai200 here to show you here as well, is that the shaping of the head, so that little notch that sits on the toe side, a little bit more weight at the top, is very, very similar. So the shaping, the scoop, the weight positioning, very similar between the Ti Fusion and the Ai200. The big difference is, the clue's in the name, the titanium fusion, the titanium face. So in the same way they've done with the drivers, that titanium face means a little bit more flexion, a little bit more ball speed. They can do a little bit more with it. There's a bit more of a rebound effect. So from a tech point of view, this is taking it that little bit further in terms of ball speed side of things. However, there is quite a difference in terms of where the ball flight comes out with this, which we'll see in the data once I get hitting. But ultimately, this is a hollow body construction, as you can see by the little plug on the toe there. That shows where they've kind of fill in the hole. So complete hollow body construction, not the same softer forged frame that we get on the Apex on the 200, 300s, but in order to bond that titanium face into the frame, the materials have to change just a little bit. So, but performance-wise, this one's really quite interesting. So we'll hit a couple of shots, and we'll see, loft-wise, this splits the difference. It's a 26.5 on the 6-iron versus 26 on the 300, 27 on the 200. So sleeker, cleaner line. It's a thinner top line with a similar kind of offset to the 200s. So it's definitely a neater club head behind the ball. So they've maintained that softer sound and feel off of this head. And that's really quite interesting, because generally out of that titanium face, you'd expect the note to change a little bit more. But it's a very kind of solid, a solid feel rather than a clicky harshness. And actually, there are quite a few of the tour players that are putting these in the longer irons to gain that technology improvement, to gain that ball speed and the forgiveness aspect. I'm going to hit one more and then we'll look at the data, because this is where it does change a little bit. So I've purposely put on a little bit more of that drawbar swing with this one. So ball speed off the face solid, 142, 143 efficiency. We're at a 16-degree launch, but with that drawbar shape, I've still got a 4,200, 4,300 revolution spin. So we've still got some flight and control. And that's one of the things that's really key to this design, is maintaining the spin. If I go into a slight fade bar shot, we're now getting with the drawbar swing on this, the same spin as I got in the fade bar shot with the Ai300. So if I go into a fade bar swing with this, absolutely ripped that as well, that sounded great. Very consistent ball speed, but the spin's now at 5,000. So the window for spin is shifting up and down between the models, and that's really what the construction allows them to do on this head. So whilst quite often the titanium faces are geared around, I guess you could call them complete game improvement clubs, just distance clubs. Actually, what it's facilitated in this is performance across the face, but whilst maintaining that flight and spin, which that's really key to why a lot of the pros are putting this in the bag, because you know what it's going to do when it lands. With the other heads, there's a bit more of a bomber in there. With this head, that spin level sitting that little bit higher just gives a little bit more control, but you're gaining absolute performance across the face from a ball speed maintenance point of view whilst retaining the spin. So there is that bit of differentiation between the heads. The 200 to the 300 is forgiveness, a little bit of offset which helps to square the face a bit more, and a little bit more launch at the 300. And the 200, slightly lower launch, not quite as hot on spin. There's a loft difference for that, but a bit of a neater frame, neater shape. And definitely both heads just give a little bit more pop and performance than the previous model Apex. But I think just take the spin down just that little bit more. But ball speed wise, really, really strong. Potentially a bit of a gap from the 200 to the Apex Pro. That if you were looking to split this out, that might need managing a little bit from loft denominations and loft gaps. But this head in particular, slightly firmer frame, but really, really interesting for someone who doesn't want to go too low in spin, but to benefit from a lot of the technological upgrades and the material differences that Callaway are really putting an effort into being a little bit more different again now. So 3 really good heads, definite upgrades and differentials from last year's models, and something we're having great results for, but there are specific ball flights and shot shapes that they tend to see the most balanced results from the first couple of months or so using them in the fitting bays.